Have you ever had a moment when your child's tantrum, their words, or even just the chaos of parenting suddenly felt like too much? Like it struck a nerve deep inside, bringing up emotions you didn't even know were there? Well, brother and sister, you're not alone. In this episode of the Happy Family Coach podcast, we're going to tackle what happens when parenting triggers your own unresolved trauma, and more importantly, what to do about it. You'll learn how to recognize these triggers, respond with grace instead of guilt, and invite God into the healing process for both you and your family. Because parenting isn't just about raising kids. It's about growing and healing ourselves along the way. Sanctification is not an Instapot work. Remember, it's a crock pot. Slow cooking. So, grab that cup of coffee, find a comfortable place to sit, and let's dive in. Welcome to the Happy Family Coach podcast, your guide to rewriting the story of your family's legacy. I'm Danielle Alvarez-Greer, here to help you navigate the twists and turns of family life, faith, and personal growth. Get ready for practical tools, spiritual insights, and heartfelt conversations to transform your family dynamic. Welcome to the Happy Family Coach podcast, where real-life challenges meet real solutions. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Happy Family Coach podcast. I'm your host, Danielle Alvarez-Greer, and today we're diving into a topic that's deeply personal for me, but also for so many of us: how parenting can trigger our own unresolved trauma. Parenting is a gift, but let's be honest, it's also incredibly challenging, right? And there are moments when our children's behavior, their words, or even just the weight of our responsibilities bring us face to face with parts of ourselves that we didn't realize were still wounded. I'm 48, and there are things that are still coming up for me that the Lord's tapping me on the shoulder and asking me to take a deeper look at. So for you, all my listeners, my children are a little bit older, but I can take myself back to when they were younger. Maybe it's a tantrum that stirs up feelings of powerlessness. Or maybe you hear a voice in your head saying something like, "You're not good enough." And these voices echo something that you used to hear as a little girl or a little boy. These moments can leave us feeling so overwhelmed, ashamed, and unsure of how to move forward. But I want to tell you right now, you are not alone. I've been there, and so have many of the parents I've counseled. Today, we're going to talk about how to recognize those triggers. Yay! How to respond in the moment. That's going to take a lot of work. And how to invite God into your healing process, which is beautiful, I promise. I'm also sharing some personal stories and listener takeaways to remind you that we are in this together. All right, so let's jump into, how do we begin to understand what these parenting triggers are? Let's start with something we can all relate to. That one moment as a parent when your child does or says something that pushes you right over the edge. And suddenly you're like in this place of, ugh, why is this tiny human getting to me so much? Maybe it's a tantrum. Maybe it's an eye roll. Ooh, that one gets under my skin. Or maybe it's when they say something like, "You're the meanest mom ever. You're the meanest dad ever." And it hits you like a brick. What's wild about that is that often those moments have less to do with your kids and more to do with what's going on inside of you and me, inside of us. Parenting triggers are those moments when your child's behavior stirs up feelings, memories, or wounds from your past. Things you didn't even realize were still hanging around. For me, one of those moments happened when my daughter, I think she was like 5 or 6, she refused to get in the car one morning. I think it was on the weekend and I had some errands to run. But I had asked her very nicely, I might add, to please grab her shoes so we could get moving because we had stuff to do. Instead of putting on her shoes and getting in the car, she planted herself on the ground like she was about to lead some sort of sit-in protest. And let me tell you, I could feel my blood boiling, my blood pressure rising. In that moment, it wasn't just about her defiance. It felt like every time in my life that I wasn't listened to or respected, that was what was bubbling to the surface. I wasn't mad at her. I was mad at 100,000 tiny little moments from my past that decided to show up right then and there. I definitely did not respond with grace. I reacted and I was frustrated and I got all over that unhappy kid triangle. But let's just be honest with each other, okay? Because when you're in the thick of it, when I was in the thick of it, I wasn't thinking things, and you're not going to be thinking things like, wow, what a beautiful opportunity this is to reflect on my unresolved childhood trauma. Thank you, son or daughter, for allowing this opportunity to come up. Nope, absolutely not. What you're thinking is something like this. Why won't this child just put on her shoes, get in the car, and cooperate? But here's the thing. Those triggers are like a flashing neon sign that you see late at night as you're passing by hotels or Krispy Kreme. I don't even eat Krispy Kremes, but they have a flashing sign when the donuts are warm and ready, fresh out of the fryer. But let's say these triggers, the one I just talked about, are like that neon flashing sign telling you and me that there's something deeper we need to pay attention to here in this situation. And the good news is that we can do something about it. We can learn to respond instead of react. Over time, this is possible, I promise. Let's talk about some ways these triggers might show up. Maybe your child's constant questioning. Why this? Why that? But why? How come? Maybe that makes you feel like you're being interrogated and you snap. Or their refusal to clean their room feels like they're intentionally disrespecting you and you overreact. What's really happening, moms and dads, is that your mind is connecting those situations to something bigger. It's like your past is saying, hey, remember me? And it's okay if you felt this way. I've been there too. And here's the truth. Recognizing those triggers does not mean you're failing as a parent. It means you're human and you're paying attention. So let me ask you, when was the last time you overreacted as a parent? Maybe it was over spilled milk, juice, or maybe it was because someone was taking too long to get ready. Not that I know anything about that. But I have to deal with that even now with a 22-year-old and 18-year-old. And I actually model that too. I have a hard time. I have to really work on being on time management. But we're looking at these triggers. So could it be tied to an old wound? If you're starting to notice these patterns, that's amazing, because recognizing them is the first step toward healing. But those triggers are not the end of the story. They're actually invitations to grow, to heal, and to parent in a new way that breaks cycles instead of repeating them. So raise your hand way up high, maybe raise both hands way up high if you're ready to break chains and break cycles of dysfunction and heal by healing your own past unresolved trauma. Okay, raise your hands up in the air and say, I'm ready. Woohoo! Okay, so let's look at how we can respond to your triggers in the moment. Let's talk about that moment. Okay, you know the one where your child's meltdown feels like it's directly targeting your last nerve. Your heart's racing, your jaw's clenching, and suddenly you're reacting in a way that feels way bigger than the moment itself. Then comes the guilt, right after you've reacted. Guilt, pity, shame, those things all come up, and that's what gets us on that unhappy kid triangle. But the guilt comes like, why did I just lose it over spilled juice? Or why did I react the way I did? I can't believe I did that. I can't believe I said that. Does that sound familiar? First, let me say this again. You're not alone and you're not failing. If you need to hear that, let me say it again. Moms and dads, grandparents, you're not alone and you're not failing. Parenting is hard, and we all have those moments. I promise. Even the people, the neighbors who appear to have it all together, I promise you they're having some moments as well. Parenting is hard. The good news is that when you feel those triggers firing off like a fireworks display, there are ways to respond with grace and growth. Let's break it down. So let's look at a couple of steps that I've put together. And this is something I use in my counseling room and when coaching families. Step one, first you have to pause and acknowledge. This is easier said than done though, right? Because it's really hard in the moment, as I said earlier, to stop yourself, to pause. But it's so incredibly powerful and worth it. When you feel that trigger bubbling up, just stop. Just stop for 30 seconds. Take a deep breath, literally, and name what you're feeling. Maybe it's frustration, maybe it's fear, or even sadness, rejection. Here's an example. One day, my son, he was much younger, he spilled his juice all over our white couch. Why did I have a white couch when they were younger? I don't know. But I snapped at him, okay? I think I even told him he was dumb. Why he wasn't thinking. Why would you take your juice to the couch? You know we're not supposed to drink juice on the couch. And this sweet little guy, he just looked at me like I had just canceled Christmas. Immediately, though, I felt terrible because he started to get a little bit teary-eyed. But instead of spiraling, I paused and said to myself, okay, I don't actually remember if this is what I said, but for the podcast's sake, I would have said something like this in this pause moment. Okay, Danielle, what's really going on here? It wasn't about the juice. It was about my fear of things feeling out of control. That pause helped me reset, and then I was able to go to him, apologize, ask for forgiveness, and then we handled the juice together without all the extra drama. So I taught him, I used that opportunity to teach him how to clean up after ourselves when we get something on fabric. And I think it even came out, and maybe there was a tiny remnant left, but it was fine. All right, step 2, regulate your emotions. Before you can respond with love, you've got to calm your nervous system. This is where simple tools like deep breathing or stepping away for a moment can be game changers. And one of my favorite tools from the Happy Kid Toolkit is the reality mat. It's the board that comes with it. The reality mat helps you slow down and identify what's really happening inside you during those moments of overwhelm. It walks you through naming your thoughts, feelings, and even the lies you might be believing in the heat of the moment. For me, the lie is often, if I don't handle this perfectly, I'm failing as a parent. If my kids aren't being perfect, there's something wrong with me. What will people think? But the truth is, God's grace is enough. Even in my mess ups, even in your mess ups, that shift in perspective can change everything. All right, let's look at step 3. Ask yourself, what is this really about? Here's where the deeper work begins, because once you've regulated, you need to take a moment to reflect. What's underneath your reaction? Is it really about your child refusing to clean his or her room? Or is it tied to something deeper, like a memory of being criticized, shamed, ignored. For me, this question has been a game changer, and it's been a game changer for my kids. I remember a time when my daughter was dragging her feet about homework, math, and I could feel myself getting frustrated. I don't like math either. But when I paused and asked myself, okay, I don't like math. That's the reality. I'm not as good at it as I am with English or creative writing. But I asked myself, okay, Danielle, what is this really about? And I realized it wasn't about the homework. It was about my fear of her not succeeding in math like I had failed to succeed in math, which honestly was more about my own insecurities than hers. That realization let me approach her with empathy instead of anger. Step 4, reframe the moment. So once you've identified the root, you can choose a new perspective. And instead of thinking, I'm failing as a parent, remind yourself, parenting is hard because it is, but I'm growing, and so is my child. And this moment is not any different than any other moment. We're all growing together. This is another place where the Happy Kid Toolkit is so unbelievably helpful. It's designed to help you move from the roles we often fall into on the unhappy kid triangle, like the helpless baby, bossy helper, or blaming bully, and to then step into healthier roles on the happy kid triangle, which are the happy kid, caring friend, and respectful leader. When I started seeing myself as a respectful leader, instead of trying to fix everything as the bossy helper, I began to completely shift the way I approached those triggering moments or moments like that. Okay, let's look at a real life scenario. So let me share a story from a mom I've worked with. She used to feel like her daughter's constant questioning. Why can't I do this? Everybody else can. Why can't I have that? So-and-so has it. She felt like it was a direct attack on her parenting. Every time she snapped with something like this, because I said so. I'm guilty of doing that. But after using the reality mat, she realized that those questions made her feel defensive because they reminded her of being overly criticized as a little girl. Once she was able to name it, she was able to respond more calmly, turning those moments into connection instead of conflict. So here's a takeaway challenge from this segment. Here's what I want you to try this week. The next time you feel triggered, pause. 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 Take a deep breath. Ask yourself, what am I feeling? And what is this really about? And if you have the Happy Kid Toolkit, try using the reality mat to walk yourself through the process. It's a small step, sure, but it can make such a huge difference. All right, let's talk about the deeper work. We could spend probably a whole year's worth of episodes talking about healing from past trauma. But we don't. We're just going to, and I'll probably bring it up in future episodes, but let's just look at it right now, talking about this deeper work, the kind that takes us beyond those reactive moments and into true healing. Because managing triggers in the moment, although it's important, real transformation happens only when we take the time to address the wounds, all of them, all the unresolved trauma and the wounds that are beneath them. I'll be honest though, this part isn't always easy, okay? Looking at the roots of our reactions can feel like opening up 100 different old wounds. But healing doesn't happen by avoiding the pain, y'all. You have to do the deep, hard work. The healing happens when we bring it into the light and invite our Heavenly Father, we invite God to meet us there. And He will. He always will, I promise. So let's look at a couple of steps that I've put together on how we can begin this healing from past trauma process. Step 1, identify your wounds. The first step is to identify what's really going on beneath the surface. And one of the best tools for this, in my opinion, is journaling. I know a lot of people, I have a lot of clients, counselees that are like, oh, I hate writing. And I know journaling might sound cliche, but trust me, it works. It doesn't have to be pages and pages. Sometimes it can just be a short paragraph or two. But here's what I want you to do. I want you to start by reflecting on recurring triggers. What patterns do you notice? Are there moments when you consistently overreact, or maybe you shut down, you withdraw, you withhold love, you get passive aggressive? What memories or beliefs might be tied to those moments? For me, a big realization came when I noticed how often I felt rejected, not by my kids, but by the echoes of my own childhood. Every time my kids pushed back, it stirred up this deep-seated fear of not being enough or not being valuable, not being valued. Writing those feelings out on paper in my journal helped me see this connection. I hadn't really made that connection in great detail before. And it also helped me realize that I wasn't trapped by those old wounds anymore, right? I have the Holy Spirit in me. You have the Holy Spirit in you. And so we have a helper to help us no longer be trapped by these old wounds. Let me share a story from one of my listeners. Her name is Sarah. That's not her real name, but Sarah has a strong-willed daughter who pushes back on everything. Sound familiar to anyone? I have one of those. Every time her daughter spoke up or challenged her, Sarah found herself overreacting. She would yell, she would then shut down, or she would feel completely out of control. But when we dug deeper, Sarah realized that her daughter's behavior reminded her of her own childhood, where she was punished harshly for speaking up, for protecting herself, or for trying to get validation. She was parenting from a place of fear of repeating the same patterns or failing to set boundaries. Through journaling and reflection, and that wasn't the only thing that helped her, but it definitely was an aid. But through journaling and reflection, Sarah began to see the truth that she wasn't failing. She was just carrying pain that hadn't yet been healed. And as she started to address that pain, her parenting slowly but surely began to shift. She found herself responding with more patience and love because she was no longer reacting from a place of fear. Step 2, invite God into your healing process. And this is where the real transformation happens, because healing isn't something we do on our own. Let's all shake our head in agreement. Yes, we realize we cannot do it on our own. It's something we do in partnership with God. I'll never forget one evening when I felt completely defeated as a parent. There were several evenings, if I would be honest, but this one particular evening, I felt completely defeated as a parent. It had been one of those days, one of those days. Everything felt like a battle, and I was so convinced that I was failing as a mom, as a parent. That night, I sat down and poured out my heart to God. I told him how tired I was, how scared I was of messing up my kids, and how overwhelmed I felt. And you know what? God met me right there. Over time, he began to reveal the lies I was believing. Lies like, you're not good enough, or you're just repeating the same mistakes. And he replaced them with his truth. Danielle, you are loved. You are chosen. My grace is sufficient for you. So parents, If you're feeling stuck in those lies, I want to encourage you to take those thoughts to God, take them captive, take them to God. Ask Him to show you the truth. Because here's the thing, He wants to heal you even more than you want to be healed. All right, step 3, seek support. Healing doesn't happen in isolation. Whether it's counseling, coaching, or even talking to a trusted friend, having someone walk alongside you in this process makes all the difference. You can make an appointment with me or countless other amazing biblical counselors, Christian counselors, therapists, and coaches out there. But this is also where tools like the Happy Kid Toolkit can come in. One of my favorite tools is the reality mat, which helps you identify the roles you're playing in conflict. Whether, again, it's the helpless baby, bossy helper, or blaming bully, and guides you toward healthier patterns. For example, when I realized I was falling into the bossy helper role often, always trying to fix everything for my kids, I was able to shift into being a respectful leader instead. That shift not only helped me grow, but it also created space for my kids to take responsibility for themselves and grow as well. And here's something I love about the Happy Kid Toolkit. I know I talk about it a lot because I created it, I developed it. You can buy it on my website, happykidtoolkit.com. But one thing I love about it is it's not just about fixing behaviors. That's behavior modification. It's about transforming the heart. It helps you see how your past experiences might be influencing your present reaction and gives you practical steps to move forward, to get off that unhappy kid triangle and move to the happy kid triangle. Okay, step 4, take one small step at a time. Healing is a process, not a destination. You don't have to figure it all out overnight. Start small. Maybe it's writing down one recurring trigger this week and praying over it. Maybe it's sharing your story with a friend or mentor. Maybe it's just opening up your Bible and asking God to show you His truth about who you are. Here's another takeaway challenge. Here's what I want you to do this week, or next week, or the following week. Put it on your calendar. Set aside 15 minutes to journal about a recent trigger. Ask yourself these questions. What patterns do I notice? What lies am I believing? And what does God say about this? If you have the Happy Toolkit, use the reality mat to walk through that moment step by step. I promise these small actions can lead to big transformation. Okay, let's go into the 4th segment of this podcast episode, and I've titled it Breaking the Cycle and Building a New Legacy. Here's the beautiful thing about healing. It doesn't just transform your life, it transforms your family. When you begin to take steps to address your wounds and grow as a person, as a parent, you're breaking cycles that may have been passed down for generations. You're creating a new legacy, a legacy of love, grace, resilience, not perfection, humility. So let's look at a couple of steps on how we can break the cycle and build a new legacy. Step 1, embrace grace in parenting. Embrace grace. Let's start with the most freeing truth that I've ever learned as a parent. Your kids don't need you to be perfect. They need you to be present. They need your love, your humility, your willingness to grow, and your willingness to own your part when you mess up and to quickly go to them when you do mess up, to ask for forgiveness, to repent and be reconciled to your children. I can't tell you how many times I've had to remind myself of this. There have been days when I've lost my patience, when I've yelled, when I didn't mean to, or just felt completely unqualified for the job of mom. But here's what I cling to. God's grace is enough, even in my mistakes. That verse, 2 Corinthians 12:9, of course, I kind of made it my own, but it has been my lifeline as a mom. The truth is, Kids don't learn resilience from perfect parents, okay? Because if you're busy trying to put on this facade that you're perfect, you have it all together, then you're kind of spend a lot of time being the bossy helper and doing for them. And how do we learn from in life? We learn by failing, by making mistakes. We learn how to be resilient. Again, parents, they learn to be resilient not because you're perfect. They learn it from parents who make mistakes, own them, and try again. Every time you apologize, every time you ask for forgiveness, every single time you choose to respond with love instead of anger, you are teaching your kids what grace looks like in action. I'll never forget a time when I completely overreacted to something my son did. Afterward, I sat him down and I said, I am so sorry. I should not have yelled. That was not okay, and I'm going to work on doing better. Can you please forgive me? And do you know what my son said? He said, Mom, it's okay. I forgive you. That moment and moments like these, because I've had to apologize a lot, that moment wasn't just healing for them, it was healing for me, because grace goes both ways. Step 2, equip your kids with tools for emotional health. As you heal, you're not just setting an example for your kids, you're also equipping them with tools to navigate their own emotions and relationships, future relationships with their spouses, with their children. Let me share a quick story. I have a lot of stories. Sorry, you have to bear with me. One day, my daughter was upset because she couldn't find her favorite toy. Now, my old default would have been to swoop in, solve the problem, and move on. But instead, I paused and I asked her, "What are you feeling right now?" She thought about it for a second and said, "I'm frustrated." That moment was a game changer for both of us, but especially for her, because it taught her how to name her emotions and work through them instead of relying on me to fix everything. This is where, the Happy Kid Toolkit can be a total game changer. One of the tools in the kit helps kids learn to identify their emotions and connect them to their thoughts and behaviors, their actions. It's a simple but powerful way to teach them emotional awareness and responsibility. Because when we give our kids these tools, we're not just helping them in the moment, we're equipping them for a lifetime of healthy relationships. Here's a third step. Celebrate your progress. Finally, let's talk about celebrating the small wins, because here's the truth. We all need it. Healing is a journey, and every step forward is absolutely 100% worth celebrating. Maybe today you caught yourself before yelling. Maybe you paused and prayed when you felt triggered. Maybe you apologized to your child for the first time in a long time. Whatever it is, take a moment to recognize it. Celebrate your progress. When you celebrate your progress, you're modeling gratitude and growth for your children. And those small moments of growth add up to something beautiful. A family that's learning, a family that's healing, and a family that is thriving together. So let's look at step 4. Focus on the legacy you're building. When you choose to heal, you're not just changing your present, you're shaping your family's future. You're teaching your kids that it's okay to make mistakes, that growth is possible, and that love is the foundation of it all. I often think about how the small things we do today ripple out into our children's lives and then beyond. Maybe it's a family prayer at bedtime, a simple hug after a hard conversation, or just sitting with them and saying, "I'm super proud of you." Those moments are the building blocks of a legacy that lasts. So here's another challenge for you to take on this week, next week, or future weeks. Take one small step toward building your legacy. Maybe it's writing down something you're grateful for in your parenting journey. Maybe it's using the Happy Kid Toolkit to help your child navigate a tough emotion. Or maybe it's simply reminding yourself that God's grace is enough for me and my family. Because every step forward, no matter how small, is a step toward a family built on love, grace, and resilience. Okay, I'm going to bring this bad boy to a close. Parenting is one of the most refining journeys we'll ever walk, right? It reveals our deepest wounds, but it also gives us the chance to invite God into those spaces and find healing. Remember, every trigger is an opportunity to grow closer to the parent and the person God has called you to be. If today's episode resonated with you in any way, any shape, way, form, I'd love to hear your story. Send me a DM on Instagram or on Facebook. On Instagram, it's the @ the Happy Family Coach. Don't forget the THE, Happy Family Coach. Or send me an email, Danielle@happyfamilycoach.com. I'd love to pray for you and encourage you on your journey. And if you're looking for more intentional community, please join my Facebook group, which is the Happy Family Coach podcast community page on Facebook. Love to meet you there. You can find a lot of free resources there and connect with other like-minded parents who are on the same journey that you're on. Okay, before we wrap up, I want to remind you about the Family 75 Challenge. If you haven't listened to last week's episode, the episode that came out on January 1st, the first day of 2025, I would strongly encourage you to go back and listen. It's just a fun challenge that I've started based off of this family, or the 75 hard challenge that a lot of people are doing. I've sort of morphed it in and made it my own to be family friendly and faith filled. But if you haven't joined yet, the Family 75 Challenge, it's not too late. This 75-day challenge is designed to help you build stronger, healthier connections with your family through small, intentional steps every single day. It can be something simple like praying together, having a screen-free dinner, or writing a note of encouragement to one another. There are countless examples, and I give lots of examples and options on last week's podcast. The goal is to create habits that foster love, unity, and growth in your home. You can find all the details in the show notes for this episode, or go join my Facebook group. I would so love for you to join our amazing community of families who are taking on this little challenge. Share your progress with me on Instagram or on the Facebook community page. Tag me on Instagram or on Facebook at The Happy Family Coach, or connect with others participating by using the special hashtag Family75 Challenge 2025. Use that hashtag. Let's cheer each other on as we create meaningful change in our families. Thank you all so much for tuning in today to the Happy Family Coach podcast. Remember, healing starts with you, and God's grace is always enough to carry you through. Until next time, be blessed, stay intentional, and let's continue building stronger families together.